The first time I saw him, he was wiping blood from his knuckles in the pale, flickering light of a back alley. The second, he was buying me a drink, his eyes like twin storms. The third, he was claiming my life, drawing me into a world I never knew existed, a gilded cage I couldn't escape. "You belong to me now," he said, his voice a low growl that vibrated through my very bones. "And there's no escaping the family." My name is Lyra. Before him, my life was a symphony of muted grays and hopeful, vibrant splashes of paint. I was a struggling artist, a dreamer with calloused fingers from playing my worn guitar, a part-time waitress at The Velvet Shadow, an exclusive jazz club known for its smoky ambiance and illicit whispers. My biggest worry was making rent and affording art supplies. My nights were filled with the soulful cry of a saxophone and the clinking of ice. My days with the quiet solitude of my easel. I chased beauty, a fleeting thing, always just out of reach. I certainly wasn't chasing danger, but danger, it seemed, had a way of finding me. My art was my anchor, my rebellion against the mundane. I painted abstracts, swirling colors that spoke of emotions I couldn't articulate, and portraits of the city's forgotten corners, the weathered brick, the neon glow reflecting in rain puddles, the stoic faces of strangers passing by. Each brushstroke was a whisper, a plea for recognition, in a world that often overlooked the quiet dreamers. My guitar, a battered acoustic inherited from my grandmother, was my confidant, its worn fretboard a map of every melody I'd ever composed, every sorrow I'd ever strummed away. I longed for a life that pulsed with vivid color, but mostly I just existed, painting my dreams onto canvas and playing my heart out to empty rooms. It was a Tuesday night, late. The Velvet Shadow had emptied, the last patrons having melted into the rain-slicked streets of the city. The lingering scent of expensive cigars, cheap perfume, and spilled gin still clung to the air, a phantom of the night's decadence. I was taking out the trash, the heavy bags slung over my shoulder, their contents rattling with discarded hopes and forgotten secrets. The alley was usually just a short cut to the dumpster, a mundane stretch of brick and shadow, perpetually damp and smelling faintly of mildew and urban decay. But that night, it was transformed into a tableau of raw, brutal power, an accidental masterpiece painted in shades of fear and blood. He stood there, silhouetted against a distant street lamp, a figure carved from the night itself, a predatory grace in his stillness. Another man, slumped against a grimy wall, was gasping, a dark stain spreading across his pristine white shirt like an ink blot blooming on parchment. And the man, my man, was Jaxen Krill. His sleeve was rolled up, revealing an intricate tattoo coiling around his forearm like a serpent, its scales seeming to writhe in the dim light. He was wiping crimson from his knuckles with a pristine white handkerchief, his movements economical, unhurried, almost elegant. There was no frenzy, no panic, just a chilling, practiced calm that spoke of countless similar encounters. He wasn't just a man. He was a force of nature, contained and lethal. My breath hitched, catching somewhere between my throat and my lungs. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for flight, its frantic wings beating against bone and flesh. I must have made a sound, a faint gasp, a soft shuffle of my worn sneakers, because his head snapped up. His eyes, even in the dim light, were piercing, a startling shade of glacial blue against the olive of his skin, like chips of ancient ice embedded in stone. They locked onto mine, and in that instant, the world tilted on its axis, every sound fading, every sensation sharpening. There was no fear in them, no surprise, only a dangerous, appraising stillness. He saw me, really saw me. Not Lyra the waitress, not Lyra the struggling artist, but Lyra, the witness. The fear that had paralyzed me was suddenly mingled with something else, something primal and unsettling, a spark of recognition, a shiver of inexplicable, terrifying awareness. It was as if a dormant part of my soul had just woken up, recognizing a kindred storm. He didn't move, just watched me, daring me to run, daring me to break the spell. I couldn't. My feet were rooted to the spot, my eyes wide, reflecting the horror and the strange magnetic pull of his presence. He finally spoke, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly calm despite the scene around him, a sound that resonated deep in my chest. "Go home, girl. Forget what you saw." It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command, laced with a threat that hung heavy in the damp night air, chilling me to the bone. I stumbled back, dropping the trash bags, the stench of stale whiskey and forgotten dreams now completely overshadowed by the metallic tang of blood. I ran, my lungs burning, not daring to look back, his icy gaze burning into my memory like a brand. That night, sleep didn't come. His face, his eyes, the blood, they invaded my dreams, painting them in shades of terror and an unsettling fascination that I couldn't shake. I tossed and turned, caught between the nightmare and a strange, undeniable pull. I tried to forget him. I truly did. I threw myself into my art, into my music, hoping to drown out the echo of his voice, the indelible image of his eyes. My canvases became a battleground of color, vibrant hues fighting against encroaching shadows, mirroring the conflict within me. I played my guitar until my fingers ached, trying to chase away the memory with every chord, every melody. But he was a shadow on the periphery of my vision, a hum beneath the surface of my consciousness, a persistent, dangerous melody that refused to be silenced. He was the dark pigment that bled into every color I tried to lay down, the dissonant note in every harmony. Then, 2 nights later, as if conjured from my subconscious, he walked in to the velvet shadow. The air in the club seemed to thicken, the chatter dying down to a hush as he entered. It wasn't just his presence, it was a palpable force, a shift in the very atmosphere. Heads turned, whispers followed him like a ripple in water. He wasn't subtle, he was a declaration. He moved with an unnerving grace, his tailored suit a second skin that emphasized the coiled power beneath, his dark hair slicked back, catching the ambient light. He scanned the room, his gaze passing over the usual clientele, the city's elite and its underworld figures, before landing on me behind the bar. A chill snaked down my spine, a familiar tremor of fear and something else, something akin to a moth's fatal attraction to a flame. My hands trembled as I polished a glass, the crystal clinking against my nervous fingers. He walked straight to my section, ignoring the empty tables closer to the entrance, a direct, undeniable path. He sat at the bar, his eyes never leaving mine, a silent challenge in their depths. "Whiskey, neat," he said, his voice a familiar, dangerous melody, a low timbre that resonated through the clinking glasses and hushed jazz. "And make it a good one." I poured it, my movements stiff, my heart still performing its panicked drum solo against my ribs. He took a sip, his gaze still on me, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. "You still look like you've seen a ghost, Lyra." He knew my name. How? I hadn't told him. The realization sent another shiver down my spine. He didn't just see me, he knew me. Or at least he knew of me. "I didn't forget," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the low thrum of the bass. "Jaxen Krill." It was simple, elegant, terrifying. "Tonight, I'm buying you a drink, after your shift." My mind screamed no. Every instinct howled for me to run, to hide, to simply disappear into the night. But his eyes held me captive, a silent, unyielding force. There was an unspoken challenge in them, a dare I was foolishly, dangerously drawn to accept. He wasn't asking, he was stating, laying down an undeniable decree, And I knew, deep down, that defying him would be far more perilous than agreeing. So when my shift ended, my apron untied, my heart still racing, I found myself sitting across from him in a secluded, velvet-lined booth, a glass of amber liquid in front of me, its warmth doing little to thaw the ice in my veins. The jazz music, usually a comfort, now felt like a haunting soundtrack to my impending doom. He talked, surprisingly, about art. He spoke of Renaissance masters, of Caravaggio's dramatic chiaroscuro, of the brutal beauty of the human form captured by Michelangelo. He talked of light and shadow, of the soul revealed in a brushstroke, of the raw emotion that could transcend centuries. He asked about my paintings, about my music, listening with an intensity that made me feel utterly exposed, yet strangely seen, as if he peeled back layers of my carefully constructed anonymity. It was disarming, confusing. This wasn't the monster from the alley. Or was it just another carefully crafted facet of him, a lure designed to draw me deeper into his web? He was a labyrinth, and I, against my better judgment, was slowly walking in, each step taking me further from the world I knew. The conversation was a dance, a subtle power play, and I, the amateur, felt outmatched, but not entirely overwhelmed. There was a raw honesty in his questions, a genuine curiosity that chipped away at my fear, revealing a sliver of fascination. He saw the artist in me, the dreamer, not just the waitress. He didn't make a move, didn't touch me, but his presence was a physical force. It filled the booth, the club, my very thoughts, a heavy, intoxicating weight. When he finally stood, a ghost of that dangerous smile returned, a fleeting promise of something dark and exciting. "Good night, Lyra. I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot more of each other." He left a stack of crisp $100 bills on the table, far more than the drinks cost, a casual display of wealth, and another one of his cards, this one with a private number, handwritten in a bold, decisive script. It was an invitation, or a warning. I clutched it, the heavy cardstock, a tangible link to the danger I was inexplicably drawn to, a secret key to a door I knew I shouldn't open. My life, as I knew it, ended a week later. I was walking home, late again, my head full of a new melody, a new painting idea inspired by the city's nocturnal pulse. The rain had started again, a gentle drizzle turning the city's streets into a shimmering, blurred canvas of reflected neon and streetlights. I hummed a tune, lost in my creative world, my worn guitar case slung over my back, a familiar comfort. Suddenly, a hand clamped over my mouth, cold and rough, another around my waist, yanking me into the dark maw of an alley, the sudden violence stealing my breath. My guitar case clattered to the ground, its strings letting out a mournful twang, a final, despairing cry from my old life. Fear, cold and absolute, seized me, paralyzing me with its icy grip. A rough voice hissed in my ear, laden with menace. "Where's Krill, girl? What do you know?" I struggled, tried to scream, but the hand was too tight, stifling my cries. My mind raced, trying to process the terror. Krill? Jaxen? Were these the men he was fighting in the alley that first night? Before I could fully grasp the terror, before the panic could fully consume me, a whirlwind descended. A blur of dark suits, the sharp crack of punches, guttural shouts, the sickening thud of bodies hitting brick. It was Jaxen and his men, a silent, efficient storm of violence, moving with a chilling, synchronized brutality. They moved with practiced brutality, dismantling my attackers with chilling precision, like predators taking down prey. One moment I was terrified, held captive by rough hands. The next, I was being pulled into a firm, unyielding embrace, the scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him filling my senses. Jaxen held me, his body a solid wall against the chaos, a fortress of muscle and resolve. I could feel the tension thrumming through him, the coiled power, the barely contained rage. His voice, close to my ear, was a low, dangerous growl, vibrating through me, a primal sound of possession. "You belong to me now, Lyra. There's no escaping the family." His words weren't a question or even a plea. They were a declaration, an undeniable fact, a brand seared onto my soul. He was no longer wiping blood from his knuckles. He was shielding me with his own body, claiming me with his very being, marking me as his own. My life, my choices, my future, they were no longer my own. They were irrevocably intertwined with his and the Krill family. I was swept away that night, not to my small bohemian apartment filled with paint fumes and half-finished canvases, but to a world of unimaginable opulence and suffocating control. His world. A sprawling estate, hidden behind high walls and iron gates, guarded by men with cold eyes and silent movements, their presence a constant, watchful shadow. My new home was a guest wing that felt more like a luxurious prison. A gilded cage built with silk sheets, gourmet meals, a personal attendant, and a distinct lack of freedom. Every comfort, every indulgence was a stark reminder of my captivity, a golden chain binding me. My initial reaction was defiance, a furious, burning anger that fueled my every move, a stubborn artistic spirit refusing to be broken. I tried to escape, once, foolishly believing I could slip past the silent sentinels, the ever-present security cameras. I scaled a wall, adrenaline coursing through me, my fingers raw from gripping the rough stone, only to be gently, firmly, intercepted by one of Jaxen's men at the perimeter. His face impassive, his movements swift and silent. He didn't hurt me, didn't even raise his voice, just led me back, his expression conveying a quiet disappointment rather than anger, which was far more effective. When Jaxen confronted me, his anger was a cold, quiet thing, far more terrifying than any shout, a glacial fury that promised dire consequences. "Did you truly believe you could outwit me, Lyra?" he asked, his voice soft, almost wounded, a dangerous edge beneath the calm. "Did you think I would let you walk back into danger?" His eyes, those piercing glacial blue eyes, held mine, unwavering. "Danger?" I spat, my voice trembling but defiant, my artistic spirit refusing to be cowed. "You are the danger, Jaxen. You snatched me from my life, from my freedom. You abducted me." He looked at me, his gaze intense, unblinking, a complex mix of emotions swirling in their depths. "Your life was already touched by danger, Lyra. Those men, they were looking for me. They would have used you to get to me, to hurt me. I took you to protect you." His words sounded almost convincing, almost caring, a twisted logic that began to chip away at my certainty. But I saw the possessiveness in his eyes, the undeniable claim, the fierce ownership. "And your freedom? What freedom did you truly have, struggling to make ends meet, living precariously, always just one bill away from ruin? Here, you have everything, except the freedom to choose your own peril." He gestured around the opulent room, a silent argument to his twisted benevolence. That night, for the first time, he revealed a sliver of the man beneath the monster, a crack in the formidable facade. He found my guitar, which his men had retrieved from the alley, and placed it gently in his room, its familiar presence a small comfort in the overwhelming luxury. He commissioned a dedicated art studio for me, a vast, airy space filled with every conceivable supply, canvases of all sizes, an endless array of paints, brushes, charcoals, sculpting tools, a room bathed in natural light, designed to inspire. He didn't ask me to paint him, or for him, just for myself. It was a strange, unsettling gesture, an acknowledgement of the person he had taken, not just the object he had acquired. It was a golden prison, yes, but one that recognized the soul of its captive. Life in his world was a constant tightrope walk between fear and a reluctant, grudging fascination. I saw him in moments of terrifying power, issuing orders in hushed tones that I knew held life or death consequences, his authority absolute, unquestioned. I heard the hushed reverence, the palpable fear his men felt for him, their loyalty forged in steel and blood.
But I also saw him read obscure poetry in his study late at night, his brow furrowed in thought, a man seeking solace in words. I saw him share a quiet, almost tender moment with his elderly housekeeper, Elena, a woman who treated him with a mix of fear and deep maternal affection, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. He was a paradox, a man of brutal efficiency and unexpected depth, a shadow and a flicker of light. My art became my refuge, my canvas a silent scream of defiance and longing, a secret language only I understood. I painted the shadows, the fear, but also the strange allure of the power that now surrounded me. I painted his eyes, those glacial blue depths that held both menace and a flicker of something I couldn't quite name, a loneliness, a burden. He would occasionally watch me paint, silent, unmoving, his presence a heavy weight in the room, his gaze intense. He never commented on my art, but the intensity of his gaze spoke volumes, as if he was trying to decipher the secrets I poured onto the canvas, trying to understand me. Then Marco came, Jaxen's cousin, a man whose ambition was as sharp as his tailored suits and whose smile never quite reached his eyes, leaving them cold and calculating. Marco saw me as a weakness, a vulnerability Jaxen had allowed into their fortress, an anomaly that threatened the rigid structure of their world. He made his disdain clear, his veiled threats chilling, delivered with a deceptive casualness that made them all the more sinister. He would linger in my studio, his words dripping with insinuation, reminding me of my place, of the dangerous game I was unknowingly playing. You think he loves you, Lyra? He collects beautiful things. You're just another acquisition, a pretty bauble to adorn his empire. His words planted insidious seeds of doubt, twisting the fragile sense of security I had begun to cultivate. One evening, Marco orchestrated an incident. He arranged for a break-in in the guest wing, making it seem like a random act, but carefully ensuring my safety was compromised just enough to send a clear message to Jaxen. I was alone, vulnerable, lost in a painting when two masked men burst into my studio, their sudden appearance shattering the peaceful solitude. My heart leapt into my throat, a frantic bird once more. Just as one reached for me, his hand grasping for my arm, a furious roar echoed through the halls, a sound that vibrated through the very foundations of the estate. Jaxen, a whirlwind of controlled rage, appeared, a dark avenging angel. He dispatched the men with a chilling efficiency that left me trembling, their bodies collapsing with sickening thuds. He wasn't just powerful, he was utterly lethal, a force of nature unleashed. He held me then, his arms tight around me, his body shaking with a fury that was both terrifying and oddly comforting, a primal roar of protection. "Are you hurt, mia cara?" he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion, a raw, guttural sound that tore through his usual composure. It was the first time he had used an endearment, a possessive, tender word that pierced through my fear and resonated deep within me. In that moment, surrounded by the aftermath of violence, the scent of fear and adrenaline heavy in the air, I felt a shift. He protected me, not just as property, but as something precious, something he couldn't bear to lose. It was a terrifying, undeniable bond. My defiance began to crumble, replaced by a complex tapestry of emotions. Fear was still there, a constant companion, a shadow at the edge of my vision, but it was now interwoven with a strange sense of belonging, a reluctant respect, and yes, a dangerous, undeniable attraction. I started to see him not just as my captor, but as my protector, the one man who could truly shield me from the brutal storms of his world. He was the eye of my hurricane, and I, a naive artist, was ill-equipped for its betrayals, for the dangerous currents that ran beneath the surface of his empire. Marco, fueled by jealousy and a thirst for power that overshadowed any familial loyalty, continued his machinations. He started to feed me tidbits of information, carefully crafted half-truths about Jaxen's past, about the family business, painting a picture of calculated cruelty. He hinted at a dark secret, a reason why Jaxen had been so quick to claim me, a hidden motive behind his seemingly protective actions. He suggested my family, my forgotten, distant relatives, had a connection to his world, a debt, a past transgression that Jaxen was now settling through me. Was I truly just a pawn in a larger game, a bargaining chip, a tool for his revenge? The thought was a cold dread in my stomach, turning every kind gesture into a calculated manipulation, every tender word into a lie. Was his unexpected tenderness just a sophisticated form of control? One afternoon, seeking answers, desperate to understand the truth, I ventured into Jaxen's personal study, a room usually off-limits, a sanctuary of leather-bound books and hushed secrets. My fingers traced the spines of ancient tomes, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Behind a heavy, carved bookshelf, beneath a loose floorboard, I found an old, leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age, its cover faded with time. It wasn't his, but his father's. Inside, meticulous records, names, dates, and a shocking revelation, handwritten in elegant, looping script. My grandfather, a man I barely remembered, a quiet, unassuming man I had always pictured tending his roses, had once been a close associate, a confidant to Jaxen's father. Not a debt owed, but a bond broken. A bond that had been shattered by betrayal. My grandfather, in a moment of desperation or weakness, had provided information that led to the downfall of a key krill operation, and ultimately to the death of Jaxen's younger brother, a tragedy that had scarred the family for decades, a deep generational wound festering beneath the surface. Marco appeared in the doorway, a smirk playing on his lips, his eyes glinting with malicious triumph. He had been watching me, waiting. Found what you were looking for, Lyra. Now you see the truth. He didn't take you because he desired you. He took you because you are a living, breathing reminder of his family's pain, a way to settle an old score, a convenient hostage for his own fragile heart. His words were a venomous poison, twisting everything I thought I knew, everything I had begun to feel, every tentative hope I had nurtured. My heart shattered, the tentative trust I had built dissolving into a bitter dust, leaving behind only the cold ashes of betrayal. Was this all a lie? Was I just a tool for his revenge, a living symbol of past grievances? The very next day, Marco made his move. He orchestrated a meeting with a rival family, ostensibly for a truce, a peace offering designed to appear conciliatory. But it was a trap. He had divulged Jaxen's travel plans, his route, and even the weakness he believed Lyra represented, me. Jaxen was to be ambushed, eliminated, and Marco would step into the vacuum of power. And I, conveniently, was to be accidentally caught in the crossfire, a tragic collateral damage that would further destabilize Jaxen, a final, cruel twist of the knife. Ambush, crossroads, Marco. It was all I could manage before I was discovered. Marco found me, the phone in my hand, his face contorted in a sneer that stripped away any pretense of civility. Foolish girl, now you die with him. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising, and dragged me, roughly, towards his own waiting car, his plan to make my death look like a casualty of the ambush, a final, ironic touch to his treacherous scheme. We were speeding towards the ambush site, the city blurring outside the window in a frantic, terrifying rush, when a convoy of black SUVs, led by Jaxen's imposing armored vehicle, screeched to a halt in front of us, blocking the road. Jaxen emerged, a dark, avenging angel, his eyes burning with a cold fury I had never witnessed, a primal, dangerous fire. He had received my message. He knew. The confrontation was brutal, swift, a whirlwind of trained violence. Marco's men were quickly subdued, disarmed, and rendered harmless by Jaxen's loyal enforcers, their movements precise and deadly. Jaxen advanced on Marco, his face a mask of controlled rage, every muscle in his body taut with unspoken fury. "You betrayed your own blood," he said, his voice a dangerous whisper, devoid of all warmth, cutting through the tense silence. "You used her, knowing her connection, knowing what she represents. For power." Marco, cornered, his eyes wild with desperation and fear, pulled a knife from inside his jacket, the glint of steel reflecting the chaos. "She's nothing but a whore, a reminder of your weakness. You let her blind you." He lunged, not at Jaxen, but at me, using me as a shield, a final, desperate act of malice and cowardice. Time seemed to slow. I saw the glint of the blade, the fear in Marco's eyes, and then the raw, visceral terror in Jaxen's as he saw the target shift to me. He moved, faster than I thought possible, a blur of dark suit and protective instinct, shoving me behind him, taking Marco's blow on his arm. A gasp escaped me, a choked sound of horror and dawning realization. Blood bloomed on his immaculate suit, a stark crimson against the dark fabric, spreading rapidly. Marco tried to escape, but Jaxen, despite his wound, moved with the force of an avenging god, a wounded lion protecting his mate. He disarmed Marco, his movements precise, deadly, his grip like iron. He held Marco by the throat, his face inches from his cousin's, his eyes burning with an unholy light. "You questioned my choice," Jaxen growled, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that promised retribution. "You thought she was a weakness. You will learn, Marco, that she is my strength." Marco, cornered, his eyes wild with desperation and fear, pulled a knife from inside his jacket, the glint of steel reflecting the chaos. "She's nothing but a whore, a reminder of your weakness. You let her blind you." He lunged, not at Jaxen, but at me. A gasp escaped me, a choked sound of horror and dawning realization. Blood bloomed on his immaculate suit, a stark crimson against the dark fabric, spreading rapidly. Marco tried to escape, but Jaxen, despite his wound, moved with the force of an avenging god, a wounded lion protecting his mate. He disarmed Marco, his movements precise, deadly, his grip like iron. He held Marco by the throat, his face inches from his cousin's, his eyes burning with an unholy light. "You questioned my choice," Jaxen growled, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that promised retribution. "You thought she was a weakness. You will learn, Marco, that she is my strength." He didn't kill him, not then, but the message was clear, etched in the terror in Marco's eyes. Marco was broken, utterly defeated, his reign of terror over. Jaxen turned to me, his eyes searching mine, filled with a raw, undeniable emotion, pain, relief, and something deeper, something I had only dared to dream of. He was bleeding, his arm throbbing, but his gaze was fixed solely on me, as if I were the only thing that mattered in the wreckage of the moment. "Lyra," he murmured, pulling me close, his good arm wrapping tightly around me, a powerful embrace that held me secure against his beating heart. "You warned me. You risked everything." My tears fell, hot and fast, against his shoulder, soaking into his blood-stained suit. "I saw the journal, Jaxen, about my grandfather, about your brother." The words tumbled out, raw and choked, laced with lingering hurt. Was I just revenge? He pulled back slightly, his thumb gently wiping a tear from my cheek, his touch surprisingly tender. His eyes held a depth of sorrow I hadn't seen before, a vulnerability that cracked his formidable facade. Revenge? Perhaps, initially. A twisted sense of justice, a way to bring balance to a score I inherited, a ghost I felt compelled to appease. But when I brought you here, Lyra, when I saw your defiance, your fire, the way you painted your soul onto canvas, it changed. You changed me. You are not a pawn, Mia Vita. You are not a debt to be collected. You are the only thing that makes me question this life, the only thing that makes me feel something beyond duty and power. The pain of my past is real, yes, but the possibility of a future with you, that became real too. He pressed a soft kiss to my forehead, then to my lips, a kiss that was both possessive and tender, a promise and a claim, sealing our fates together. You belong to me, he reiterated. But this time, the words were different. They weren't a threat. They were a covenant, a sacred vow. But I belong to you too. You are the only person who has ever seen the monster and still dared to stand by him. You are my secret weakness, Lyra, the one thing I cannot, will not, ever lose. The choice was no longer his alone. My world had irrevocably merged with his, the muted grays of my old life now vibrant with the dangerous, intoxicating colors of his. The gilded cage was still there, but now the bars felt different. They were still there, but now I had a say in how they were painted, how they reflected the light. I was still Lyra, the artist, the dreamer, but I was also something more. I was the woman who had seen the darkness and found a flicker of light. The woman who had been claimed by a mafia boss and had, in turn, claimed his heart. I was his strength, his vulnerability, his queen in a dangerous, beautiful empire. And for the first time, in the chaos of his world, I felt truly, terrifyingly alive. This is not a fairy tale. There are no happy endings in this life, only ongoing battles, shifting allegiances, and the constant threat of the shadows. But in Jaxen Kryle's arms, I found a different kind of truth, a truth forged in fire and blood, a love as dangerous as it was undeniable, a masterpiece painted in the darkest hues of fate. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I wouldn't have it any other way. The family, his world, was now mine, and there was no escaping it. What do you think happens next in Lyra and Jaxen's story? Will their love survive the brutal demands of his world? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of dangerous passion and impossible choices.